Hey everybody, it's Dr. Eric Balcouch back for another edition of Thyroid Thursday, and today we're talking about progesterone. Hot topic, a lot of people being prescribed progesterone, especially women who are kind of shifting into perimenopause and menopause. And I see a lot of them coming in, and one of the most common complaints I see in people who are taking progesterone is chronic fatigue and brain fog. And I also see in a lot of these people that they have a reduced conversion of T4 to T3. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. Now, if you're one of the people taking progesterone and you're saying, hey, the progesterone I'm taking has changed my life, I can sleep again, I have less anxiousness or less anxiety, I agree, it can be helpful. But I want to talk to you about why it might be creating fatigue and why it might be creating some hypothyroid signs and symptoms. So progesterone is a hormone we typically make earlier in life, especially as women. You guys make a lot more progesterone when you're having your menstrual cycle, but as you're shifting from a cycling female to a non-cycling female, estrogen levels go down, progesterone levels go down naturally. Now, I won't even get into the conversation like, should we always be, providing every woman who's going through perimenopause and menopause hormone replacement? That's a whole nother discussion. But the question becomes, is that all good, or could it create some challenges and some problems? So common reasons people are prescribed progesterone. A lot of times people who have abnormal cycles are prescribed progesterone. If they're going through perimenopause, menopause, making that shift, they may be prescribed both estrogen and progesterone, maybe just progesterone. If somebody's got estrogen dominance, somebody might provide progesterone to offset it. If they have low progesterone for some reason, they may be given it. If they have sleep issues, insomnia, anxiety, this I see is one of the big reasons that people are prescribed it as they're making that shift and transition. And when we talk to people, they say it has made a huge difference in their life. And I agree, it can. However, there's a couple things that we need to be aware of. Progesterone naturally drops off in the second phase of life. And it's usually not just that you're not making progesterone, because if people are built to not have as much progesterone in the second phase of life, there's usually something else going on that's contributing to the insomnia and to the anxiousness, anxiety, depression, and the other symptoms for which they may want to take this. And how you want to take care of yourself is up to you. If you want to take progesterone, if you want to take bioidentical hormones, that's totally fine. Everybody has a right to choose what they want to do. But I want you to be aware of a couple things. One, there are lots of side effects from taking progesterone, so you should be aware of them, because I see a lot of people come in on progesterone, they've been taking it for a while, they have lots of symptoms, and they don't realize that some of those symptoms may actually be caused by the medication. But two biggies that I typically see is, number one, fatigue. People complain of brain fog and fatigue, and they're not understanding why the progesterone may contribute to that. Well, one of the ways that progesterone works is that it actually has an impact on what are called your GABA receptors in your brain. And those are the things that kind of slow the brain down. And when we calm the brain down by binding progesterone to those GABA receptors, we have less anxiousness, we're able to sleep better. Now, it doesn't address the real issue that you have, the anxiousness, the anxiety, insomnia, but it helps you get to sleep. However, the big challenge is, especially with the most common prescribed types of progesterone, the half-life can be 18 hours. So if you're taking that, especially if you're taking it before bed, and it's having an impact on those GABA receptors and allowing you to go to sleep, you may still have a bunch of that progesterone impacting those GABA receptors when you wake up in the morning and for the early part of the day, which is going to do what? It's going to slow the brain down, create the fatigue symptoms, and create some of that brain fog. If you don't experience those things, that's awesome, that's great. Maybe it's not an issue for you. But if you're experiencing brain fog and fatigue and maybe some of those other symptoms, you have to start to consider that maybe the progesterone while it may have been beneficial for some of your signs and symptoms, it may be actually creating some as well. So the other thing that's really important to understand is that progesterone can increase free T4. And that sounds great. Hey, if we increase free T4, there's more T4 to be able to get into the cells and tissues. However, what the research shows is that it did increase free T4, but without increasing free T3. So as free T4 builds up in the bloodstream, what does it do or have the potential to do? It has the potential to decrease deiodinase 2, the primary converting enzyme of T4 to T3. So what we often can see in the people that are taking progesterone is they actually have a reduced free T3 to free T4 ratio, which might mean that they have tissue hypothyroid signs and symptoms, and that some of their signs and symptoms that they're complaining about from a thyroid perspective could be the result of taking the progesterone, reducing the T4 to T3 conversion, and therefore slowing down their metabolism. So if you look at some of the progesterone side effects, they look very similar to hypothyroid signs and symptoms, so be aware of that. So what are my thoughts on it? If you take it and you feel good and you function good, it doesn't matter to me. I think that's great. But if you are taking it and you sleep better and your anxiety's better, but now you have depression and constipation and brain fog and fatigue and you're gaining weight, you need to have your thyroid panels checked to see what your T4 to T3 conversion is, free T3 to free T4 ratio. You should check your general labs for patterns of tissue hypothyroidism. Do you have glucose resistance going on? Do you have decreased GFR? Are your liver enzymes starting to indicate a fatty liver issue? Are your lipids going up? Or is there increase in inflammatory markers? Has your vitamin D levels dropped? So these are things that you can look for if you get a general chemistry panel done, you can start to look for the hypothyroid patterns, tissue hypothyroid patterns. And I've talked about this on a previous Thyroid Thursday, even in our book, The Thyroid Debacle. What else could you consider? You could consider working with whoever the prescribing doctor is to say, what happens if I reduce the dose? Do some of those brain fog and fatigue symptoms and maybe some of the other symptoms go away? Or maybe do a week trial of no progesterone and see if your signs and symptoms get better. If your signs and symptoms get better, the brain fog, fatigue, constipation, depression, if they get better, but now you have insomnia or anxiety, now you have to make the decision, either am I going to just live with the side effects of progesterone and sleep better and have less and maybe have brain fog, or do I try and minimize the dose, use the smallest dose possible, and then work with somebody from a functional medicine perspective to say, okay, what's actually creating the need for this extra progesterone that my body normally wouldn't make in this phase of my life to support the GABA receptors? What can I do to actually address the real root issues that are creating the insomnia, the anxiety? And then the last thing is consider addressing the cause, which is essentially what I just talked about. If you're taking it for estrogen dominance, maybe we need to figure out why you have estrogen dominance, especially if progesterone is at an appropriate level. If progesterone levels are low, but you have normal estrogen, maybe normal testosterone, then we should maybe be asking, why is this person not producing progesterone naturally? So my thought is, if you're on it and you feel great and you're functioning great, that's awesome. If you're taking it because you had sleep or anxiety issues and now you feel better from that perspective, but now you have brain fog and fatigue and constipation and your metabolism feels like it's slowing down and you're gaining weight and getting glucose resistance, maybe it's time to consider that it was a good temporary strategy and a management strategy, but maybe it's time to start addressing the real root issues. If you have any questions, put them below this video. Hope this helps. Take care.